Good evening, guys. Today is Tuesday, and it is the 13th of April. This is LNM4, and we're doing the last review before the final, which has already been sent to you. So the last review is also the going through of the homework for today, which would have prepped us for this, and I think you're just going to fly right through it. So what I'm going to do, we have decided, as I told you, if you saw my email from Sunday night, I think it was, outlines a little bit of the process from here on and on to the end of the semester, which is right upon us. The final you got and the deadline for handing that in is on next Sunday, the 25th at midnight. So you have quite a good time to get this finished. If you need to review this video and the one from this morning, you obviously can do that as many times as you want, and that should give you all the details that you really need. So I'm going to go through the homework and go through all the things that I would like to do for the final exam. The only thing that really counts is what is in the actual sort of realization of this example of a chord progression. So all the other things that you need to line up, such as the chord spelling and lining up the chords and all that, you can do that for yourself, but you're only going to be graded on the actual thing that's going to take place inside of the SATB system. So inside of these lines here, with the soprano, the alto, the tenor, and the bass, that's what counts. The other things are just there to sort of get a good way of working it out. I think it's important to sort of do all these things in a way so you understand the process. I'm going to go through all of that today and take what you want. Okay. So the homework exercise for today was in F major. Obviously, the key that you're getting for your final is not going to be F major, because otherwise I couldn't go through it in all the details here today. But the progression is going to be the same. It's going to start with a 1 chord. It's going to go to a 1/6 chord. It's going to go to a 2/6/5 chord, which is one of the predominants that we used last year, and then transition to a 6/5 chord as a 5 or 5 chord. So the dominant of the dominant in first inversion. I'll break all this down, so don't worry about it. And then it is going to have a 5/8/6/4, 7/5/3, and then finish in the 1 chord. Very, very often in the past, when we've done this, we reviewed it last semester and we used it throughout the semester and throughout this semester in the beginning. This would be the same as a cadential 6/4 chord. So sometimes we wrote it up with a C and then 8, 6, and 4. That's the same thing. Here, we just see the way that we very often come across a cadential 6/4 chord as a Roman numeral 5 with an 8, a 6, and a 4 above it. These are intervals above the bass. They're not scale degrees, they're intervals above the bass. So basically, just to start sort of in reverse, just to nail this one here down, a cadential 6/4 chord is basically scale degree 5 in the bass with an octave, a 6th, and a 4th above it. So you are going to get the starting pitch. In this case, that will be F, but obviously in the key for the final, it's not going to be F. It's going to be whatever is the tonic root of that key. And what else are we going to get? We're going to get the fifth scale degree here and fifth scale degree here, and then either one up or down, that's up to you. And then I am going to start you off with the starting pitch. Just to remind you that in good part writing, a very, very good sort of rule of thumb is to say that if you have a root position triad, have the chordal third on top. Root in the bass, third on top. If you have a first inversion chord, have the root on top. That goes throughout this example here. So the first thing I think would be a good idea is for you to break down what these chords actually are. In the key of F, this would obviously be an F major triad if we're in the major mode, which we are. And in F minor, there will be an F minor, but we are in the major mode, so there will be F, just straight F. 1/6 would be F over A, because it will be 1 in first inversion. That's what the 6 means. Sometimes we also see 6, 3. And if I write them up here, that would be my F major triad. And if I have A in the bass, and I have a 3 and a 6 above it, we can see that this is the same triad. Obviously, this would just be F. This would be F over A. I don't think so far that there's anything revolutionary about this that's going to upset you at all. But I want to explain yet another time. Here is the 3 above the bass. It's not called figured root. It's not called figured key. It's called figured bass. So over this bass is A. A is in the bass. Over that A, we have an interval for 3, a third, and we have an interval of a 6. That's how that works. Okay, I'm going to erase this. You can always get it back by review by double tapping on your phone screen or whatever you're reviewing from, or move the cursor, whatever you're using when it's uploaded to YouTube. The due date for this is, again, for those who came in late, April 25 at midnight. That's outlined in the email I sent on Sunday night. So just go to your E360 inbox and check that email. It will explain a few things. The file is already in your inbox. You've got this week and then next week. Next week, there will be no lessons. I'll simply just leave you to do this stuff here. And after that, I'll go through the exam and give you a preview as far as time and all that allows, a preview of next semester, just because we might as well finish this off. We already covered what we needed to cover this semester. Basically, we've covered secondary dominance with this. There was an attempt last week by, to introduce another 5 of something else. In that case, there was 5 of 2. But basically, they all work the same way. A secondary dominant is basically a dominant 7 chord, usually, of something other than the tonic. And you'll find that to find the dominant 7 chord, you'll simply have to go to, okay, what is it the dominant 7 chord of? In this case, it's of the 5th scale degree in the key of F. You have to outline this one here is C. You have to understand that we are now looking for the dominant 7 chord of C. And we're looking for that in first inversion. We'll get to that. Now we're here. That chord is easy to understand as well. We're in the key of F, so F is 1. That means 2 is a step up from F, which is G. Oops, hope you can read that. And we can see from the lowercase that it's a G minor triad, at least. And then we can also see that it's in first inversion. How do I know that? Well, if you think about last semester when we did all our predominance, we understood that a 4 chord at major or minor, and a 2-6 chord, and a 2 diminished 6, and a 2-6-5, and a 2 half diminished 6-5 are all chords that we call predominance that have scale degree 4 in the bass. And that means that this one here, if that's a 2 chord, let's say it sits here, right? That will be scale degree 2. I'm just going to use this. This is just my little scrap paper here, right? This is scale degree 2. If I have scale degree 4 in the bass, that would mean that I'm up here, because 2 plus 2 is 2, 3, 4. 2 plus 2 is 4. And that means that it's sitting on the chordal third. I'm going to write up the chord now. Now we understand how to arrive at the bass. So B flat is in the bass. This is all G clef. B flat is in the bass. I'm going to add, and if I were to give it the full name, it will be 6-5-3. Just like this one here is called 6-3. Usually we don't see the 3, and in the test you're just going to have the 6 because that's the professional language. 1-6 is simply the tonic in first inversion. That one. This one here has a 6, a 5, and a 3 above it. Here's a 3. Here's a 5. So 3, 5, and 1 more than 5 is 6, because 5 plus 1 is 6. So here's the layout of that chord. It's called 6-5 or 6-5-3. The 3 we normally don't see. And in the test, it's just going to say 2-6-5. Think back to last semester. We know that there above this bass, B flat, is going to be a 5 and a 6 clashing. If I were to put this in root position, it would look like this. Because G is the only pitch from which I can spell all the other notes in that chord in thirds. That means that G is the root of the chord. If I move G up here, G is still the root of the chord, but it's now sitting in another voice. In other words, it's not in the bass anymore. G minor, and we can see there's a 7 in here, over B flat. That's what I have down here. Well, now I do. So we know that a 6-5 chord is a 7th chord in first inversion, because the only time that we can produce 2 numbers next to each other, either 6-5 in this case, or 4-3, or the number 7 itself, or the number 2, it is by having a 7th and a root in the chord sitting right next to each other. To find out what 5-6-5 or 5 is, we have to know what 5 is. We have to know where we are going, otherwise we can't find the direction. It's all completely hands-on and commonsensical. There's nothing sort of esoteric about this way of understanding theory. We have to understand that we're going to see C is 5 of F. How are we getting to C? We're getting to C via its dominant 7 chord. So now we have to start from C, and we have to count 5 steps up. Here's C, C, D, E, F, G. Use your fingers. Don't just think that you can sort of just go through all these motions, get your technique down straight so you're not making a mistake. This chord is some type of G dominant 7 chord. But we can also see that it's inverted. because we have a 6 and a 5, just like this one here. So we can see that it's in first inversion because a 6-5 chord is a 7th chord in first inversion. This is a dominant 7 chord, unlike this one here, which is a predominant 7 chord, if you like. I'm going to move this down here. Just like that. That's a little cleaner, I think. Okay. So we know that this is a G7 chord, but we also know that it's inverted. Because it, like the first one here, it has a 6 and a 5. That means it's a 7th chord in first inversion. So let's place it in root position first. Here's the G7 chord. The difference is this. Because a dominant 7 chord is a major triad with a minor 7th. A minor 7th, the F, root, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. The F is a whole step down from G. That's why we call them minor 7. Because if I raised this, I would have a 7th that is bigger, called a major 7. That's not the one we have here. We have a dominant 7 chord, which is a major triad with a minor 7. I'm going to invert this. I'm going to put the G, the root, up on top. And there you'll see that this one here is also a 6-5 chord. Here's a 3. Here's a 5. Here's one more than 5, 6. 6-5 or 6-5-3, that's the full name for it. We don't need the full name, we just need the 6 and the 5. We can see that a 6-5 chord is a 7th chord in first inversion. So this one here sits on top of its 3rd, which is B natural. I'm just going to make that absolutely clear. That the difference between these two chords here is basically G7 over B natural. Now, you don't actually, as I said in the beginning of the lesson, you don't actually need to write any of this stuff up if you don't want to. You can, and I think you should, but that's for your own good. The only thing that's going to really count, because the sort of summary of all the events is what takes place inside of the SATB here. I'm just breaking it down to show you exactly all the steps that we need to know. This one here is obviously an F major triad again. And I'm going to leave these two alone. We know that this one here is a C7 chord. To find out why it's a C7 chord, we have to start with F now, because this one here is the dominant 7 chord of the tonic. Here's F, that's 1, G, A, B flat. But even if you didn't know the key signature, that's a B flat, you'll still end up with C as the 5th scale group. F, G, A, B, C, B flat. So we can write this one up if we want. Oops. Made a triad, minor 7. You can see the problem very quickly becomes that all these chords are the right chords, but they're obviously not connected very well. So that means, you can probably play them on the piano or whatever, but you will not be able to sing them very well because the voices are not distributed in a good way. They're not flowing really well. So therefore, while it's easy to play things on an instrument, you just have to, but you have keys, you have valves, you have frets, you have different things on instruments. On the voice or with the voice, things are slightly more complicated. So since many of you are working as cantors or music ministers in your church, writing for voice and being able to arrange for voice is a really essential skill. Maybe not for the job you have currently. I don't know what kind of job you have currently, but if you want to move on the system and get a better job at some point, then I can assure you that the all-important criterion for whether they choose you or someone else in the really top jobs is that you are able to do this as well as all the other things that you do very well in addition. I can now outline my base. I've already given you these 2 notes. They're going to be on your test. This is going to be on the test as well, because I want you to start well. And I want you to also bear in mind that you have to end up at scale degree 5 in the bass, and then simply just stack up an 8, a 6, and a 4, maybe not in that order, we'll figure that out. And then correlate the dominant 7 chord to this chord here. The one says 7, 5, 3, that's your dominant 7 chord. And then be able to finish in the tonic. As I said, root position, root in the bass, 3rd on top. First inversion, chordal 3rd in the bass, put the root on top. Now you've done what we call voice exchange. That's a really, really good little trick to know. It's actually one of the essential skills in harmonizing tonal music is to understand how this works. Great little trick. The F is the same as that F, meaning that it swaps places. The 3rd here, the A, is the same as the 3rd that you will have in the bass here. So what you've done is basically you created a tonic that's a little longer, sounds like this. In isolation, it sounds. And if you harmonize it, it's a very common beginning to a lot of sort of hymn settings. Good little trick to have. Here, first inversion, you got the chordal 3rd in the bass, put the chordal root on top. Same thing here. You got the chordal 3rd in the bass, put the root on top. It's also a very, very good way to we're not doing composition here. We're not trying to be creative or anything. We're just simply arranging the voices so they flow really well. And so that even if you can't read music, you will be able to sing this straight off the page. So you don't have to rehearse extra, and you can do some pretty advanced harmonies, in fact, with the voices not moving very much at all. Here, B flat, I can write that in. Anything that is below the slash is the bass. So you can just write the bass in here, B natural. So we see we're going up, in this case, chromatically, and then we're ending up on scale degree 5. So we have an upward direction of the bass. And we have to bear in mind, although we can see some variation here, but we can see that we're now going down here too. We can see that this voice is on the way down. So we're creating contrary motion between the outer voices. That's an overarching idea that you have to sort of try to bear in mind as you're writing this out. Direction of the lines is really of primary importance. You may remember from last semester that if we have a 6/5 chord, whether it be this 6/5 chord or this one, when we have a 6/5 chord, the cadence pattern that works really well is the one that we call 3, 2, 1. So in other words, scale degree 3, scale degree 2, scale degree 1. That works really, really well for any time that you have a 7th chord or a 6/5 chord as your predominant. If you have just a straight triad as your predominant, very often the 8, 7, 8, that will be like this. I'm now gonna 8, 7, 8. We go from here to here to here. You just play that. That will be like this. That works really well if you have a triad for predominant. In this case, you have a 7th chord. And so we choose this one. In other words, 3, 2, and 1. So this three blind mice works very, very well when we have a 7th chord as our predominant. Now I said it at least 10 times, and maybe you can remember it. I said 10 more times, and then one more time on top of that. And then still, when you're sitting your entrance to Manhattan School of Music or Manners or whatever, wherever you're going from here. So what was that again? Was it a triad with the 8s? Now I can't remember. So the purpose of repeating these things over and over again and doing them over and over again is that these are standard processes that you're going to come across again and again, and then one more time in your music career. These are standard progressions. They work really well. We know how to write them, etc. Okay, next step is simply to fill in the chord. We've got them all written up here. And we know that if I have an F and an A, I need a C, but I also need one more voice. I need to double my root in this case. Always double the root as your first choice. So I need another F, and I need to write in a smooth way in closed position. Here's my F. Start with the alto. So once you've plugged in the bass, that's the easiest part, then go to your soprano and then write down, meaning end with the tenor. Here is the closest F I can find to the top voice. So because I need to double my bass, right? Or my root in the chord. Here I double the root as well. That's a good thing as well. Here I need, so all these notes are taken care of. The only thing I haven't taken care of, but I'll come back and sort of bear in mind that the C I haven't placed yet. That one I haven't done. But I've done the F and the A, and I doubled the F. All is good here. I just need to place the C. I already know that that C is probably going to be here, right? Because if I place it down here, it's going to run into the bass line. Not a good idea. It's also good for many other reasons to place the tenors up in the range around middle C-ish, sort of give or take. Here, I can see that the missing note is another C, because now I've got two Fs, I got an A, and I got a C. Perfect. All the notes I counted for. So you're starting out really well. Here, I've got a B flat, I've got a G, I've got to place an F and a D. Well, the F, if that's in the chord before it, keep it. Notes that you have in chords before you know, the one you're about to write, if you can keep it, do that, because it's even easier for singers, let's say singers who are not good readers, to repeat the same note. And that means that so now I've got the F in place, the only thing I need to place is the D, and I only got one choice. Don't place the D down here, because then they're going to leak down a 7. That's not a good idea. You're not going to have them do that. You know that these two chords are the same, except for the B flat, which you already accounted for in the bass. Let's see if I got a pen. Just write out the tenor again. So you can see that this here is the most boring tenor you've ever seen in your life. Starts in C, goes to D, and God knows what happens after that. This one here is the most boring alto you've ever seen, because so far they've just seen an F, right? And they're repeating the F, they're repeating the F again, they're repeating the F yet again, because why have them change around? The harmonies are going to sound the same. It's just going to be more difficult if you flip this around all the time. You're not going to sound any better. And especially not if you have the tenors and the altos pretty much in the same range. They're not going to sound any darn differently. You're just going to make it harder to sing. That's just bad writing. That's what that is. You think, oh, I want to be artistic and I want to have, you know, my D down here and then the F, and whatever. Don't do that. Okay, so far, I'm locked into position because it's 3-2-1. I know that because it's a 6-5 chord. It's a 7th chord as a predominant, and that means that the 3-2-1 pattern works really well. But I can also check myself. You already got this note because it's in your exam. I've written in scale degree 5 in your exam. I need an 8, I need a 6, and I need a 4. Which one of these notes is already accounted for? So above this C, the A would be the 6. How do I know that? Well, you can count it. Here's C, that one. That will be your starting point. C, D, E, F, G, A. That one is 6. You don't need to worry about that anymore. To find the 4, go 2 down from 6. I hear this all the time. Oh, you have to be good at math to be good at music theory. Rubbish. You just need to be able to count. If you know what you're doing, you can count on your fingers. You know, the highest interval you're ever going to find is an octave. That's 8 of your 10 fingers. That's all it takes. And then you have to be able to subtract 2 from any given number up to the number 8. I think that's possible. You know? So, you know, here's 4. And what about the octave? Well, you'll be here, right? Because an octave above C is another C. And here we can see very elegant that we're going in contrary motion, as we should do, into an octave. Bingo, bango, it's perfect. And everything is now very, very, very simple because everything goes down by a step in the key of F. This one here, that's the 4, right? The 6 has already gone down to 5, so we don't need to worry about that one anymore. This one here is 4, right? We don't need to worry about that. We don't need to worry about 8 either. And we have to have that go down by a step. That would be that one. It has no other place to go because we've written in closed position. This is just good craftsmanship. It's nothing other than that. It's just if you are starting out as an auto mechanic, you learn how to use your tools, right? That's all. That's all we're learning here. This one here, the octave goes down to a 7, right? And it goes down to the kind of B that you have in the key of F. Let's say you forget that that's a B flat. No big deal. We'll clean that up either after the test or in semester 5. Not a problem. Okay, this one here is the leading tone, because if you analyze this as a scale degree in F, you'll see that E is scale degree 7. Goes up to 8. And this one here, B flat, is scale degree 4. Goes down to A, and you have your F major triad right there. Let's say we're in F minor. You just lower the third scale degree. I mean, you do it down here too, right? Now we're in F minor, big deal, 4 flats. You don't need all of the flats. But we're in F major, so that's all good. Here's one little thing that I want to add to it. If you prefer a full chord at the end, if you prefer a full chord at the end, you can, although I don't advise it, but you can go down and complete that with the chord of fifth, because, and only because, the leading tone has been resolved by another voice in the same register. So we can't really hear the difference when we hear the music between the sopranos and the altos when they're in parallel thirds. So you can go down and get a full chord in this particular case. However, personally, I prefer this one, where you have a root, 2 other roots, and just a third. That's called an 8-3 chord, because all you have is octaves and thirds in that chord. That's all you need. This is what you need for your final. If you do it like this, you're going to sail right through, and believe you me, you will have learned a lot. If you look, just take a bird's eye view of what's on the table here. There's a lot of information here. There's a lot of information, and it's neatly packed, and it all makes sense as far as, you know, all the students who came before you have been through this, you know, in other sort of programs, really. Before we had the current program mapped out, they went through it probably in what we called Series 4 back in the olden days. We still call it Theory 4 or LNM 4. We don't now just have another semester tacked on top of that. But on the other hand, we also scrapped what we called, in the olden days, we called basic music, which is now LNM 1. So it evens out the same way. But in fact, we're actually a semester ahead of time. Because in the old program, this came at the last semester. This comes at the penultimate semester. We have one more semester to clean this up. And it hasn't been easy because of this whole COVID thing. I think some things have been easier, actually, because I know that a lot of you didn't have to commute. You know, I was the only one in the group sort of having to commute, because I basically taught from down the office. That's where I'm right now. So we didn't have the situation where 20 people got stuck at the subway and class was happening sort of haphazardly. That to me is a good thing. And I don't mind commuting on behalf of the group. It's all good. Whatever. Okay, any questions? We're good to go. Okay, and this very good. This one will be uploaded. You can watch it 125 times if you want. You'll be very annoyed with my voice at the end of the day. And you can watch the presentation from this morning. It's identical to this one here. I didn't want to make it more complicated. I think, you know, it's time to just get really streamlined. This is what you need. You need it in a different key. But the principles are absolutely the same. That's why we can compare scale degree 1. It doesn't matter if we have A flat minor here, right? Let's just say for the sake of it, that's an evil key because it's got 7 flats. The principle would be the same. The chords would be different, right? And obviously the notes would be different. But the principle for understanding how to generate all this stuff would be absolutely the same. That's why the Roman numeral system is so elegant. It's very streamlined. It's easy to understand. And we can expand upon it. So that's a really, really good thing. Okay, with that, I'll just close and say we will check in. You have until the 25th at midnight to do this. I think that's completely possible. And after that, we'll get a little preview of the next semester. So I bid you good night then.
Thank you. Good night. Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much.